Hi everybody, today I will be tackling Squid's Bright Green Field on this episode of Louis Bertou's Music Reviews. After a slew of singles, the Brighton-based rock band Squid have released their debut album, and it's really shot up the charts in terms of popularity. At one point it was sitting at the number one spot of 2021 albums on Rate Your Music, and I guess it's my job to tell you if that's deserved or not. Yeah, why not? This record demonstrates what's really sort of possible in the rock music genre these days. The band Squid seem to take pages from post-punk bibles like Marquee Moon by Television and Entertainment by Gang of Four, as well as some more recent bands. I sort of hear the steady rockish pulse of a band like Crack Cloud in this music, which is certainly a band I enjoy. Squid channel these influences through their own distinct style of less conventional songwriting, as well as utilising multi-instrumentalists within the group. You've got on bass and brass Laurie Nantivell, as well as Arthur Ledbetter, great names all round, on strings and keyboards. So really quite a few multi-instrumentalists in this group, and they're well utilised. Really having these extra instrumentalists I think contributes to the density of arrangement, because this album is quite packed with different sounds going on. There's also quite a clustered approach to riff writing. You can just really tell that the band had a load of ideas and they were just really passionate about making those ideas come to life on this record. Like, I personally have a soft spot for more all-in, anything-goes approaches to music that bands like classic post-punk bands like This Heat or the Swell Maps might have. And I think Squid definitely have taken some influence from those bands. However, if I may say so, some of the sounds on Bright Green Field I feel could be more daring. And really, the well-produced sound of this album potentially removes some of the rock sensibility that made those bands I just previously mentioned so likeable. But yeah, overall, lots of ideas, lots of instruments, and longer form songs, less conventional songwriting. It's all here on this album, Bright Green Field. So yeah, let's move on to the tracks. Prepare yourself. On the first track, the first proper track after the introduction, we're met with this quite typical post-punk sounding groove. Later on, the voice enters, quite earnestly singing this one line: "As the sun sets on the GlaxoSmithKline, it's the only way that I can tell the time." Yeah, as I say, quite earnestly sung and a little bit pretentious sounding, if I may say so. But hey, it's all part of it. It's post-punk, isn't it? Shortly after, some shards of glass from the guitars is met with strings and horns. And it's really one of the most densely produced tracks on the album, I think. It's quite a ballsy opening, I would say, just to open your record with a track that's just so all in. The band immediately follow it up with an 8.5-minute song, so really they're not pandering to the casual listeners here. This is really, if you're into it, you'll stick around, but if you're not, you're going to go, aren't you? And I respect that. I do respect that. Although, on first listen, I was certainly a little bit put off almost by this album. I thought, just based on that first song, I thought it was going to be needlessly complex, slightly arrogant music. However, what won me over was the fact that track 3, Narrator, it's really good. I'm fairly disillusioned with modern rock music in general, unless it's live, sort of right there in front of me. But I've got to say, when Martha Skye Murphy starts really giving it in the vocal delivery, and then the band seem to kick into a new gear near the end of this track Narrator, like the hairs on the back of my neck do stand up, and it's just a really great moment. Similarly, that section that precedes it, the I Play Mine section, that kind of repeated vocal mantra almost of I Play Mine, it's a really great section. It's really hypnotic and almost ritualistic sounding. And it's a moment that I'm going to continue coming back to this record for. And honestly, Narrator as a whole is a great song. Not just for those 2 moments I mentioned before, but just also the progression of it, just the journey it takes you across. And yeah, it's up there for me with Job's Lament as best rock song of the year so far. It also demonstrates quite a seamless transition into the next song. Boy Racers brings in this added angularity and jaggedness and close soundingness to it, I think, which contrasts really well to the more expansive, open-sounding second half of the track Narrator. Paddling's a fun one as well. It has this great sense of inevitability about it when the bass comes in. And later on in the song, there's this really great tempo shift, tempo increase actually, that succeeds, I think, in getting the blood pumping. It's a real rockin' moment, I think. It's also met with a few time signature changes, which again just feel totally natural. They're not like overly complex for the sake of it. These do feel part of the song, these time signature changes. After this track, paddling, not pedaling, the record continues a similar vibe of urgency, excitement, anxiety, whatever, over the top of these steadfast, head-down kind of rockish grooves. However, I do find I sort of begin to tune out of specific tracks around this point in the record, and the sound just begins to merge a little bit into one, I would say. I feel, personally, that I'm in need of a sonic change of pace at around this point, and I don't feel that I get it in the following tracks of this album. Really, I think you've heard it in the first four, not counting the introduction. Like you've got the kind of slightly arrogant, pretentious sound of that first track, GSK, the catharsis of Narrator, and then on Boy Racers, there's quite a strange sort of change up halfway through, going into that ambient passage, which is quite unexpected, but also striking. And then, of course, Paddling is just an all-round rocker. But I feel like it might have worked better, this album, in an EP form even, or just a shorter record, a mini-album perhaps. And that might just be my age talking. You know, I've been listening to experimental rock music for quite a while now, and it takes a lot to impress me, I think. I'm a bit of a bastard in that regard. But yeah, like I say, if I was hearing this record for the first time as a 15-year-old, it would totally blow me away, so I can totally understand how, to some listeners, this might be an absolute gem, even beyond those four tracks that I just mentioned. One track that slightly bothered me, though, is Global Groove, which just seems a bit over the top, I would say. Some of the brass arrangements just don't seem all that necessary for the song, and it feels just a bit like a non-song that was arranged in a slightly clever way, and there's a few lyrics that sound a bit woke, and I don't know, it just comes off to me as a slightly more of a try-hard song without really having any sort of deeper meaning to it. On a more positive note, I really do enjoy the dynamic contrast on a song like 2010. The group seem to just come out of nowhere with this really heavy riff that just, it sounds like a guitarist falling down the stairs, being electrocuted, all while plugged into a sort of stack of amplifiers turned up to 11. It's a great moment, and I think it makes me like the song a fair bit more than I probably should. Similarly, the closing track has this certain hype to it that's difficult not to enjoy, even if it does go on slightly too long. So that sort of wraps up my thoughts, I guess, on the tracks. There's some that I really enjoy there, and some that perhaps I didn't need, but that still continue the vibe, continue the sound of this album. So if you're a fan, you'll like them, I'm sure. And overall, it's great to just see bands really trying out new things in the genre of rock music. Squid seem to be at the helm of this within the mainstream. Honestly, these guys, Black Midi, Godspeed, Black Country, we're in for a few rockin' gigs when live performance does eventually return, I can tell you that much. But back to the new record here, it has a lot going on for it. You've got quite dense arrangements with strings, horns, electronics, the post-punk sounds as well, all melded together. And there's also some more quite interesting compositional choices as well, which are enjoyable for a listener. And on some of the tracks here, especially the first four, I would say there's a few tempo increases or vocal mantras that get repeated. They just really do it for me and just create tracks that I want to return to. However, if I had to criticise the record, I would say that the sound after this first half does become a bit of a slog, and I'm just sort of in need of a bit of a sonic change of pace. Sometimes even the arrangement choices feel just clever for the sake of it, as on a track like Global Groove. And they don't seem to be really hitting any sort of deeper mark, which is something I look for personally when I listen to rock music. But despite all that, taking into account everything I've already said, I would rate Squid's Bright Green Field as a strong 7 out of 10. I'll certainly be keeping an eye out on this band in the near future, for sure, because from an ideas generation point of view, this record is a veritable treasure chest. Let me know what you thought of it in the comments below. I certainly enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next review. Bye bye.